welcome back or welcome in once again to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. It's great to be back with you again. Week 3 is upon us. We are less than 48 hours away from kickoff Saturday, and just the mere thought of that just sends me to my happy place. Now, in my happy place may not be Virginia Venet and garter belts and 2 pitchers of beer, Chubbs rocking away on the piano like Happy Gilmore's happy place, but still, right there in my happy place. I'm your host, Blair Parks, coming to you live from the man cave, and today we will look at everything once again across the college football landscape, but especially look at the black and golds whom we love, the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Missouri Tigers. So this is our Week 3 preview. Earlier this week, if you missed it, feel free to check out our Week 2 review show. And Week 2 really showed us everything. It showed me several things that I wanted to see, but still a few unanswered questions that linger. I did title Week 2 as Show Me Saturday, but what I'm going to title this week, Week 3, I'm going to quote Mark Richt, the former longtime coach at Georgia, then a small stint at Miami, when he waxed so poetically that when it comes down to polls, when it comes down to conference standings, power rankings, standings in the conference, well, if you win, you'll move up, and if you lose, you'll merely move down. Well said, Coach Richt. Well said. High five. So, in the spirit of Coach Mark Richt's great analogy there about simply sometimes winning is enough, I am going to title Week 3, just like Al Davis would say, just win, baby. Just win. So, Week 3, a lot to dive into. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a quick shout out, a very, very happy birthday to my brother, Anthony. He has been a loyal viewer since I launched this vlog. He is the best member of the Black and Gold family. If you recall from episode 1, kind of gave you the backstory. My father was the one who introduced me to all things Iowa athletics, especially football, but my brother, he's the one who really kept that flame lit, even to this day. I mean, whenever we talk, at some point we're going to talk Iowa athletics, football, basketball, the non-rev sports, and some of the greatest memories I have as a child, as a young man, an adult, was spending time with Dad and Anthony, watching the games, attending the games, and those memories have lasted a lifetime and will last beyond this life. Now, as I try to pass on that same love and passion to my children, but Dad, Anthony, you set the bar really, really high for me. So I need to say happy birthday. He's awesome, he's great, and I couldn't have a better brother. But this week's show, I've got 5 topics to share with you. Out of the gate, as normal, we are going to have an updated storylines and headlines, something that did break in between today's show and the show earlier this week, the Week 2 review. I'm going to then share with you my updated Heisman standings, who's solidly a finalist, who's moved into the conversation, who's maybe find themselves on the way out. Get out! After that, if you watched the episode earlier this week, I gave you my initial team power rankings. I gave you my top 10 plus 2, which I will update those every week during our review shows. So those will usually be posted by Tuesday, Wednesday morning at the latest. But today, I'm going to give you my initial Power 5 conference power rankings, where I see these conferences stack up when compared to one another. And might as well say, I just mentioned it, please, if you haven't yet, like, share, subscribe, smash those buttons. We'd love to take this to the next level. I love to grow, and the more involvement, participation I get from all of you, the Black and Gold family, the better. Those who have been loyal or who are helping us, I will reward you. And to prove that, later this episode, everybody's favorite segment, during our Pick'em, Week 3 Pick'em segment, I have asked my friend Brett, who lives in the Chicagoland area, longtime friend of mine, met him back in college. He's been a loyal viewer. He's going to be our guest picker today. I'm almost pushing celebrity picker. I mean, to me, he's a celeb because he is the man. He's the best, but guest picker, celebrity, I'll leave that up to you. So after my conference power rankings, then I'm going to just go into what I need to see, what our beloved Black and Golds of Missouri and Iowa need to show us during Just Win Baby Week. And then after that, go right into the aforementioned Pick'em segment, but also will give you a list of my off-the-radar games and my, what games, Admiral Akbar? The trap games for Week 3 coming up. Man, it's great to be here, and please do what you can, subscribe, share, like. I'm not doing this for any profit. I'm doing this simply because I love this sport. I think it's the greatest thing that we have from an athletic perspective. My passion, it's a hobby, a love, and I just want to share it with you and would love to have you share your thoughts with me. How I'm doing. Hey, could you bring this up? What do you think? Comment, comment, comment. So let's dive right into this. And as you can tell, every preview episode up to this point, the last two, I've had the same attire on, my game day hair, which I need to do proper like. I've got my Iowa number 6 Tim Dwight jersey. Not that I'm a superstitious fellow or guy, but Iowa is out to a 2-0 start. Number 5 in the AP poll. 2 huge victories, so if something's working, why change it? But I must confess that I also have wore this same attire on the last 2 games Saturdays during the Hawkeye game. So yes, and I probably will continue until something happens, but hopefully that'll be later than sooner. So our first topic today is storylines and headlines. And there is one that I did see earlier, reported yesterday morning. Really kind of is an absolute bummer, not just for the player, but for the team, but also me. If you've been watching, I have been kind of bullish on the Boston College Eagles. Not that I'm saying they're going to win the ACC, but they are absolutely a tough team. They brought back a lot. Their quarterback, Phil Jurkovec, has been getting a lot of potential NFL love. A lot of scouts absolutely love him. He was a transfer in from Notre Dame and has been getting it done. Had a good season last year, off to a good start this year. And I just thought that that was maybe a team that could potentially challenge Clemson in the Atlantic Division. But unfortunately, bad break. This might be a bad pun there, but during their Week 2 game, Phil Jurkovec did leave the game with an injury, ended up being pretty severe. Some potential bones broken in his hand and his wrist. So he is expected to be out the remainder of this season. So tough break for the BC Eagles and QB Jurkovec. Maybe this team can still surprise. I mean, I don't know where they are depth-wise in the quarterback room. But now that the backup is going to be getting the first team reps, maybe they still can be a potential force to reckon with. Maybe a team still that can stay on the radar in the ACC Atlantic. We'll have to wait and see. But it does bode well for next week, Week 4, our Missouri Tigers, MIZZOU. And I do say our Missouri Tigers. Obviously, I am a Hawkeye fan, but I reside here in the Show Me State, so my local team. And I do root for the Tigers. But next week, our Missouri Tigers travel to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College. Preseason, I did pick Mizzou to win that game. We'll see what next week brings, especially after Just Win Baby, week 3. So that game will absolutely make our picks for next week's preview episode. So, tough break. Not the news we want to hear. I hate seeing any amateur athlete go down with an injury, but especially one that's a key cog in what could have been a pretty excellent season for the Eagles. But hopefully, speedy recovery, get back to it, and hopefully pick up where he left off. Next topic we're going to go into is this is where I see the updated Heisman finalist race at. Right now I have, what we got? 5 candidates that I see as firmly in. These are yays on my voting ballot, if I was to have a voting ballot. I have the Georgia QB, JT Daniels. I have the Oklahoma quarterback, Spencer Rattler. The Ole Miss quarterback, Matt Corral. And the Ohio State wide receiver, Chris Olave. That is only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pardon my addition. So I have 4 individuals who are firmly in the race. And of those 4, my preseason picks, I only had 2 of those right. I did believe that JT Daniels and Spencer Rattler would definitely get invites to New York City, to the athletic club. Matt Corral, Chris Olave, they were kind of on my radar, maybe in the next guys out category. But to update you, I have to remove a couple of the finalists that I gave you during last week's show. He was kind of a flash in the pan. After 1 week of me mentioning him, welcome to the Heisman potential party. Removing himself is the Notre Dame quarterback, Jack Coan. And Jack Coan himself has performed well, but then again, not as well as it looks now on paper. His opening game at Florida State, excellent game, epic. They were up late. Florida State came roaring back with McKenzie Milton. What an inspiration story so far. Might be one of my stories of the year. Ties them, and Florida State gets the loss in overtime. So a impressive win at a hostile environment for the Fighting Irish. Jack Coan's numbers were excellent that game, but now we know a little bit more. I mean, if you missed it, Florida State suffered a horrific loss last week at home to FCS Jacksonville State. Quite simply could be the worst loss in that storied program's history, but it is their first loss ever to an FCS opponent. So that game now by Jack Coan does not look that good at all. Not impressive, and they were lucky to beat the Toledo Rockets out of the MAC Conference week 2. Final score 32-29. Notre Dame scored with a minute and a half left to clinch it, but way too close. Woo! Sweating it out there in South Bend. So Jack Coan, he gone. The other person who I now have removed, I do think this candidate could get back into the race if this team is able to potentially win out. That would mean sweeping Oklahoma, because I do not see Texas being ready to take the next step this year in the Big 12 under Steve Sarkisian, especially after last week's showing at Arkansas. But my Heisman pick, and me humbling myself again in front of you, friends, family, all the black and golds, my preseason Heisman pick to bring home the hardware was running back from Iowa State, Breece Hall. After the loss against Iowa, he gone, but he does have a chance to get back in. If his rushing numbers get anywhere near they did last year, which could happen, has plenty of time, plenty of games, couple big marquee matchups, could find himself back on the right side of the bubble, speaking NCAA tournament talk. So right now he's on the bubble, but I think on the wrong side of the bubble. So, yeah, my Heisman pick is already out potentially, but he was not the reason why Iowa State lost to Iowa. He just faced a very, very daunting defense. It just didn't go his way. But I think he will have a chance to show what he's really made of. So best of luck to Breece Hall. But as of now, he is out of Heisman of the Heisman race. So we have 4 left that are going pretty strong. So feel free, comment, let me know if you agree, disagree, or maybe who you think I should add to this list. Go ahead and add to the comments below, and I'll get that information on air for you. My next topic, today's show, I'm getting so giddy, I'm getting so fired up, my blood's a-pumping, it's boiling. Week 3 is almost here. This is just excellent. I missed this so much from last season, during the truncated season, especially being a Big Ten man. The season was off, then it was back on, then it was off again, and now we're right back here. Now it's on. So this is great to experience, and I'm having a great time sharing this and experiencing this with you. So thank you for your viewership and your attention. So now, this could be a major topic of discussion amongst all of you, among social media, experts, pundits, which I've never claimed to be, but I do know a thing or two about this game, and a lot of the forecasts that I've already said early on in this season, my earlier episodes, have come to fruition. But I'm not claiming to be any sort of oracle from Delphi, okay? I'm not that, but I do have some skill when it comes down to college football. My next topic is my initial conference power rankings. Who's on top of the Power 5 and who's bringing in the rear? Let me go and get a quick swig of agua. So let's start with, and I'm going to have a little bit of fun today, which I like to do on this show. This show, once again, is not made necessarily for the fanatical fan, the serious fan, the one that counts down, like some of us, to opening day every year come January 2nd after the major bowls are over, other than the playoff games. But it's also for your just casual fan or just somebody who wants to have a couple talking points and be entertained. That's my job, is to entertain you. And as I've asked before, just like Maximus, are you not entertained? Let me know. So here we go. My initial conference power rankings, and for those of you who know me personally, you know I am a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, and as you can tell from all the episodes you've seen to this point, if not, go back, check them out, I love music, I love movies, I make several pop culture references every week. It's just a part of who I am, but that's what I'm going to do on this show. It's going to be fun. It should be, a little bit of just relaxation and a low-key kind of a vlog. So I'm going to give you my conference power rankings with a twist, a little Bruce Springsteen with it. Number 1, right now, after week 2, leading the conference power rankings is the mighty SEC, but the song I picked to best describe them is Prove It All Night. Prove it all night, prove it all night. Girl, there's nothing else that we can do. And maybe I like to think sometimes that every time Blair Parks sings, maybe, I don't know, maybe an angel gets his wings, but that's not reality. So the SEC is right now in front, but they still need to prove it. And the reason why is they do have in both the AP poll and my unveiled team power rankings I gave you earlier this week, number 1 and number 2 in both of those, in Alabama and Georgia. But still, I need to see a little bit more. They simply can't hold on to the top spot just because you have the number 1 and number 2 teams. At that point, that's not necessarily always accurate as far as what the best conference is. Because we've had conferences that have been dominated by one team and one team alone in the recent past, Clemson, ACC, that still doesn't necessarily put you so far in front to where you can't be caught. So right now, it's kind of a photo finish. I think the number 2 conference behind them, I think the SEC would be leading by a nose right now. But there are some big-time showdowns this week that could maybe either have them solidify that spot or drop. Alabama, the #1 team in the nation, travels to the Swamp, to Gainesville, Florida, to take on #11 Florida in their house. Huge test for the Crimson Tide, potentially. And undefeated #22 Auburn travels for the first time, I believe, in 90 years to play a Big Ten opponent. They travel to Happy Valley to take on #10 Penn State in the whiteout. The ABC national game. Crowd's going to be lit. And that's what all the cool kids say these days. Say it's lit. It's lit. A little dab there for you as well. So huge matchups. If they were to lose both of those, or if one, maybe they could slip back into second place. We'll have to wait and see. The second conference, right behind, and like I said, a nose behind the SEC, has got to be the Pac-12. And the Springsteen song that best describes this, because of where the Pac-12 has been in the court of public opinion. They've been the whipping boy, the redheaded stepchild, the Rodney Dangerfields. I get no respect, as I gotta say, the Rising. Come on up for the Rising. Come on up, lay your hands in mine. It's got to be the Pac-12, sitting at #2, just behind the SEC. UCLA and Oregon have once again brought prominence and relevance and playoff discussion back to the Conference of Champions. I love it. I still believe the win by now #4 Oregon at Ohio State in week 2, and week 1's UCLA win over then I believe it was 15 LSU in the Rose Bowl. Those wins have resonated the most for any conference to this point. And Oregon's #4 in the nation. So as of today, if it started, they would be in the playoffs. So kudos Pac-12. And you know from watching the show or talking with me, I am very bullish on the Pac-12, especially this season. I think they have depth, they are talented, but then again, the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate, they are also the only Power 5 conference in the nation to have 3 teams that are 0-2. Arizona, Washington, who once found themselves ranked in the initial AP poll to start the season, and Cal. And also, they have 4. And also, I believe, Washington State, I think, got off the schneid. Let me see here. Because I want to see standings. Let's see. So let me just check this really quick here on my laptop. And I can let the anticipation build. You can sit there and talk amongst yourselves. So let's see here. Let me look at the Pac-12. So let's see. Cal, Washington, and Arizona. So, Washington State must have got off the schneid on week 2. So there we go. That's why I'm going to go ahead and check myself before I wreck myself. So the Pac-12 still does have a little bit to prove, but right now they are potentially neck and neck with the SEC. And they have some pretty good matchups this week as well in the Pac-12, which I'll get to some of those games later on this episode with the picks, trap games, and off-the-radar games. #3 in my conference power rankings, got to go with the Big Ten. And for this song, because I'm an Iowa fan, it's a great start to the season. We find ourselves #5 in the nation, which still has been earned. I'm tired of seeing people saying Iowa doesn't belong, blah, 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 blah. They're the only team in the nation who's beaten 2 ranked teams, people, and beat them handedly. One of those, a top 10 team on the road. So they have the best resume, period, of anybody in college football right now. That could change. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated, but obviously I'll take that. No one's saying that yet. Way too early, too much football to play. But for them, because I am hoping, land of hope and dreams. Meet me in a land of hope and dreams. Because Iowa has us dreaming of the season that could be. And #9 Ohio State keeps us hoping for a return to earning a playoff berth. So there's the hope of Iowa and the dreams of Ohio State and their fans. Ohio State does have that early season loss to Oregon. Can they come back? Can they fix their defense? We'll have to wait and see. Coach Day has officially made an adjustment to his defensive staff without saying so. Said that he would right the ship, that he's taking more responsibilities. But is he calling the plays? Did he replace his defensive coordinator officially? We don't know. So officially has made an adjustment, but unofficially we don't know to what extent that is. So right now, as far as using the horse race analogy, SEC out front, Pac-12 a nose behind, and the Big Ten is half a horse length behind. So those three have kind of a little bit of separation from the other two, but still really early. Number 4, my conference power rankings, I've got the Big 12. And the Big 12, I got to go with the Immortal Classic, Born to Run, is what is a good way to summarize the Springsteen song for the Big 12. Because, baby, they were born to run. Number 4, Iowa State dropped from number 9 to 14 after the defeat against our Hawkeyes. But Iowa State and Breece Hall are still running towards the big prizes. I mean, I still believe he will end up being the best rusher in the nation. Just had a rough game against Iowa, did have a fumble that led to a scoop 6 score late in the third quarter, but also faced a very underrated yet schematically sound, solid Iowa defense. So we'll see how he bounces back. And Oklahoma, they're number 3 currently in the AP poll. They're leading the sprint to the finish just a little bit out in front of Iowa State, but Iowa State has every opportunity to close the gap and overtake them, since more than likely they will end up playing them not once, but twice this season. And now bringing up the rear, that leaves only one. There can be only one, as Kurgan said. That is the ACC, and they are absolutely in the rear view mirror. And the song I chose by Springsteen to summarize where the ACC is currently is I Wish I Were Blind. And the title, that says it all right there. Clemson, right now, Clemson is the only team that is noteworthy in the ACC. They are holding the water. They're like the life raft, the dinghy, but it is even slowly taking on water. North Carolina, who opened the season number 10, big upset loss opening night. Actually, it was on a Friday night to Virginia Tech. They still find themselves ranked. Miami ranked number 24. They have no business being ranked after getting dismantled by Alabama and then eking out a victory, a 2-point victory at home over Appalachian State last week. So, yeah, the Clemson is currently taking on water a little bit. And I basically would say they are 2 horse lengths behind and fading right now down the home stretch to the finish line, if this were a horse race. There's a couple of decent matchups this week that maybe they can improve their positioning in this race. But by the way it's gone, looks like they can probably only hurt themselves more. So over there, if you could see, if I could pan, I've got the choir. Right now they are warming up. So next week, next Thursday or Friday, when you see my next set of conference power rankings, maybe some Amazing Grace or Ave Maria might be suiting for the ACC, officially putting them potentially out of the playoff picture early. Stay tuned. So, during week 3, just win, baby, I'm also going to share with you the conferences with the most to gain and the most to lose. I'm going to start with the conferences with the most to lose during just win, baby. Week 3 is the SEC. I already said if both Alabama and Auburn lose or just won, in addition to numerous other off-the-radar and trap games listed later, I think the Pac-12 could vault in the lead. just slightly in the lead, or at least be tied neck and neck. And the other one I already mentioned is the ACC. If they lose multiple of their matchups this weekend, to quote, I believe it was Bill Paxton's character in Aliens, Hudson, game over, man, game over. That'll be it for the mighty ACC. And some of those matchups, these are intriguing matchups for the ACC. Number 20, we've got Michigan State, an upstart Michigan State team, at number 24, Miami, which that all of a sudden does not look like any sort of layup for Manny Diaz and the Hurricanes. Number 15, Virginia Tech travels to West Virginia. That game did make our pick segment for later on in the episode. One of the brain games, Northwestern travels to Duke. UVA, a Virginia team that is 2-0. Their quarterback Armstrong, I forget his first name, but statistically he actually leads the nation in QB stats. It's pretty amazing what's happening maybe there in Virginia, but we'll have to wait and see. UVA travels to number 21, North Carolina. So if they lose the majority of those games, it's it. Game over, man. Game over. God, you gotta love Aliens. Alien, maybe it's better than the sequel. I know there was like 500 million Aliens movies, but to me there's just 1 and 2. I mean, Aliens is probably my favorite of the two. Agree, disagree, let me know, and why. So conferences with the most to gain during Just Win, baby, week 3. The Pac-12, already mentioned. They could be the benefactor of one man's misfortune, being the SEC, if they were to lose one of or both of those high-profile games. And the Big Ten. The Big Ten, if it's to win the majority of its spotlight games during this week, they could maybe move into second place if the Pac-12 kind of has an off week, but the Big Ten shows up and shows out, which they potentially could. I mean, their matchups are going to be a little more difficult. I already mentioned Michigan State goes to Miami, number 24 Miami. Minnesota travels to Colorado, which that did make our pick segment for later this show. How will the Gophers and my guy PJ Fleck, can the boat be rowed up a mountain slope? We'll have to wait and see. Purdue goes to number 12 Notre Dame, who looks very anemic right now, looks like The Walking Dead. That's kind of the analogy I used during our week 2 review show earlier this week, that they are like The Walking Dead right now, just like Texas A&M with their quarterback issue now that their starter is out potentially till mid to late October, that maybe they just need to be put out of their misery by Daryl Dixon or Michonne or Negan. Who knows? And big one, number 8, Cincinnati, kind of the darling of the non-Power 5 schools, travels to Indiana. Now, an Indiana team that most everyone believed was going to challenge Ohio State. I never said that. I think they're a very good team. But to say that they can challenge Ohio State, they are not near ready. But to be all fair, no one really is. Even though this is right now an Ohio State team that does have some issues. Their defense, they do not strike the same fear into me as other Ohio State teams have in the recent past. That's a big game for the Big Ten and Indiana especially. I mean, can they rebound? I mean, last week they whooped it out. They really broke it off on Idaho's ass, the Vandals. But can they prove that it was just an anomaly? That absolute beatdown that our Hawkeyes gave them week 1, 34-6. They came in ranked number 17. So let's see. Maybe they can pull themselves off the mat. You know, Coach Tom Allen, who I absolutely love, can get those boys fired up, get them inspired, and maybe they can pull off the upset. We'll have to wait and see. And number 22, Auburn, like I mentioned, travels to Penn State on Saturday night's whiteout game. So the Big Ten definitely has a little bit of say-so. They can really cement their standing in this, what I believe right now is a 3-horse race for the best overall conference. But if things go their way, both they take care of business and conferences just slightly ahead of them, the SEC and Pac-12, have an off week, then they could find themselves potentially in the lead. So check back next Thursday or Friday during Week 4's preview week. I'll give you my updated conference power rankings and where they stand. All right. So our next topic, I'm going to go into what I want to see from our beloved Black and Golds during Just Win, baby, Week 3. And that's really what this should be for both our squads, both Missouri and Iowa. They have what you could consider layup games, especially Missouri. Missouri's hosting FCS foe Southeast Missouri, the Red Hawks. Shout out to the folks down in Cape Girardeau. I got to tell you, they did a great job, good educations. My wife went there for her graduate studies. My brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, both attended SEMO, met, now married, obviously. So shout out to the Red Hawks. And Iowa hosts Kent State. Kent! This is Jesus, Kent. I know most of you are probably not going to get that reference, but if you've never seen the movie Real Genius, put it in your queue, order it this weekend, do it now. Real Genius. So Iowa taking on Kent State. So let's start with Missouri. What I think they need to do and what I need to see during Just Win, baby, because they should get the victory, and they will. But we've seen stranger things happen. So for Missouri, so we'll start with the Tigers. So this is perfect time for a so-called get right or layup game because they really need it. Last week, tough loss. I say a tough loss. It was a great showing last week for Missouri at Kentucky, which has been just a house of horrors for them recently. They've now lost 4 straight games in Lexington to the Wildcats. And Missouri fans, I feel your pain. There's something about Wildcats. Because Iowa fans, right now, they know what I'm about to say. They know where I'm going. Who's been the thorn on our sides for all these years, especially under the Kirk Ferentz era, which is now in its 23rd season? The Northwestern Wildcats. So we do have that in common, those thorns in our side. It was a very good showing for Missouri. I mean, tough loss because they did get beat up. They absolutely got manhandled along the lines of scrimmage. Offensive line did okay, but defensive line, they could not get off the field against Kentucky's rush attack. So that's where they need to make the most improvements along both sides of the line. They did a better job last week protecting Connor Bazelak, keeping him clean and upright, but still there were times to where he was running for his life. So they definitely need to build that strength and depth this week through reps. They just need to get off the field and just really push SEMO around. I mean, SEMO should not ever be able to at any given time sustain any sort of longevity of controlling the line of scrimmage this Saturday against Missouri. The offense needs a clean game. Try to limit your turnovers. Last week they did a much better job with that, and I was really impressed with Mizzou's toughness and grit last week to come back being down 21-7 in a hostile environment. But the offense does need a clean game, and they do need to make it a priority to try to get Tyler Beatty some rest. I mean, watching him run and how much they're using him this early in the season is making me tired. His tires have got to be getting a little bit flat. And quite frankly, they should not need him for the entire game to take care of business and just win, baby. So what I suggest that old Coach Drinkowitz should do, Coach Drink, all about him. He might be my favorite coach in the SEC as far as his sound bites, his personality, what he's got cooking there in Columbia. But maybe just rotate, not possessions, but rotate drives. Not series, but possessions. Maybe one possession, Tyler Beatty's out there as your featured running back. The next, Elijah Young. maybe somebody after them, you need to just save his legs. Tyler Beatty is your best all-around weapon offensively. He's looked great the last 2 weeks, both rushing and catching, but like I said during the week 2 review, is he doesn't necessarily excel at either one. He is solid at both, which makes him dangerous. So you need to try to save his legs a little bit, give him some time off. Hopefully we don't see him at all in the game in the fourth quarter. And also another thing is rest, recoup, and be as healthy as possible for next week's tough game on the road at Boston College, which I already brought up. And try to avoid that season-altering injury. But that's something that no one has control over. So that's what I'd like to see from Mizzou, to just win, baby, but try to win right, get right, work things out. You've got plenty of time. This is a perfect time for Mizzou to work on things that they need to improve. And SEMO is the perfect opponent to do that. Next for the Iowa Hawkeyes, our Iowa Hawkeyes, is out of the gate, I'm telling you right now, we're excited. We have hope. There's a buzz around Iowa City, everywhere amongst the Black and Gold Nation and the Hawkeye Nation. Do not come out. Please try to avoid the hangover from last week's game. Big win to win the Cy-Hawk series. Game day being in Ames, Iowa, you still take care of business. Defense looks phenomenal, flying around, being disciplined, scheming beautifully. Offense did not turn the ball over. But just try to avoid that hangover. Because I will tell you this about Kent State. And I haven't watched them this season, but I did have the pleasure of watching some of their games last year. Is this team is fast. Boy, they're fast. You talk about speed and space. They're like Fast and the Furious. And I say that because last year, I know at the end of the season, they were second in the entire nation in Division I football, only behind Oklahoma for the number of offensive plays during a game. They play quick, and they are to the throttle every single play. But obviously, if they're not getting first downs, they aren't going to be able to operate at that sort of pace. So Iowa better come out and be ready to play, because if not, this team could end up gassing their defense potentially. So just come out ready to play. Don't be looking ahead, and don't have a disastrous letdown game. All right? And this is also another perfect opponent for a so-called layup or get-right game, because Kent State will give them a little bit of a challenge, I think much more than SEMO would give Missouri and anybody else. But here's what they need to do. The defense just continue to stay disciplined and execute. And I anticipate and I hope the streak will reach 25 games. If you're unaware, to this point, Iowa has kept 24 straight opponents. 24 straight games. They have allowed opponents less than 25 points. That is amazing. And I expect and hope that it gets extended, but you never know. I mean, I'm not saying Iowa has to put up a 50 or a 40 burger, but we'll get to that here in the offensive side in a little bit. They do need to work. There does need to get some work done and growth along the defensive line. They're young. And that was my biggest concern coming into the season. I shared that with you all earlier this season during this vlog. But their back seven is absolutely legitimate. But their front four, I was worried about their depth, and they only have one returning starter. So they definitely need the next couple of weeks to grow, get some depth, get reps, and get healthy. But right now, the first two games into the season, they are doing very well. They're not necessarily recording a lot of sacks, not really getting a lot of hurries, but they're showing good gap integrity and discipline, winning the point of attack, not over-pursuing, and letting their linebackers clean up the runs, and letting their defensive backfield cover guys like glue with the pass game. So I actually believe the next 2 weeks, because Iowa's next two opponents, Kent State In week 4, they host Colorado State, who's just coming off of a loss against Vandy. These are the two most important weeks, I think, for Iowa as far as a growth perspective. So this is what the offense must do. The O-line does need to get a little bit more experience. They're still fairly young. They need to give Spencer Petras a little bit more time because especially in the Iowa State game, 4 sacks and 3 of those took them out of field goal range, or at least better field goal range. They punted one, they attempted one that was made, and one was a botched snap. But he was running for his life a lot. But that's something else I'll get to here. So the offensive line definitely needs to gel. These are kind of guys that don't have a lot of starts together yet, so maybe the cohesion, that glue needs to improve. And this is a good opportunity this week and next week with who they have to cement that. And they do get right guard Kyler Schott should come back. He's coming back from a injury to a foot from hay baling, which only in Iowa is that going to happen, to have a player sidelined from a hay baling accident. But he's back on the 2 deep. I don't know if he's going to start this week. Might get a little bit of playing time, but you don't need to rush him back. And he is somebody who has some experience from last year, but slowly work him in. Don't overdo it. So the O-line. My major concern for this offense is their vertical passing game. Spencer Petras, I said this during the week 2 review show earlier this week, he definitely needs to increase his pocket awareness. I mean, he can't take those kind of sacks like he took against Iowa State. If that continues to happen, you're going to take your team out of field goal range, lose the field position battle, maybe get a strip sack, choke up the ball, who knows. And if that doesn't get righted, that is absolutely going to cost Iowa a game at some point this year. That's why I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. I'm not going to sit there and shout, "Oh yeah," and come crashing through your wallet at home like the Kool-Aid man would. They still have some issues. They need to fix some concerns I have before this team could really potentially be the team that I want them to become, that maybe they can become. But his pocket awareness, but throwing the ball vertically. He needs to, first of all, increase his completion percentage. Right now, he is right at 50%. It's like 49.5. That is not sustainable for success. You need to be able to throw the ball, at least get your completions percentage to at least 60, 65% is what you're shooting for. He doesn't necessarily have to throw for 300 yards a game. This defense, I think they are as good as advertised. They will keep them. They will give Iowa the chance to win any game this year. The offense just needs to limit their mistakes, get some points here and there. Special teams will absolutely help them. I think the Iowa special teams are just as impressive and vital as their defensive unit this year, and they've shown that so far. He needs to get his completion percentage up, and he needs to include his wideouts. His wide receivers are just non-existent through week 2. Tight end Sam Laporta and Luke Lachey, they're getting a lot of targets, the majority of his pass completions. You need to work in their best playmaker on offense for skills other than running back Tyler Goodson. I'll get to that next. Is Tyrone Tracy Jr. Absolute game changer, but they need to find a way to get Tracy Jr. some more touches. Get him the ball in space. Do something. He is being so underutilized right now as a wide receiver, experienced guy. Get him involved. So you need to work on your pass attack the next 2 weeks. And Tyler Goodson and Ivory Kelly-Martin, they've rushed the ball effectively. Nothing jumps out at you as far as numbers through the first 2 weeks, but a lot of that comes down to the offensive line that needs to grow, and they also did play 2 good defenses. Let's not forget that. So I think the offense, a little bit more work to do, especially passing game, but just like I said for Missouri, avoid the season turnaround injury. do whatever you can to avoid that bug this week. And also the special teams, the punter from down under, Tory Taylor, averaging 51 yards per kick. Please keep that up through. That's their 2 games, and I think that will be sustainable. If you're averaging 50 yards per punt, you're going to flip. You're going to continuously flip field position, and that absolutely aids Iowa's defense. I said this earlier this week. To me, punting is an extension of your defense. That is a defense's first play because it really sets up what is the offense going to do from that position on the field, and also from a defense, how are we going to scheme against where they're taking possession. So that's what I need to see from both our black and golds. Go Tigers, go Tigers. Not those LSU Tigers, Coach O. The Missouri Tigers, go Hawkeyes, just win, baby. So that's what our black and golds need to do. And tune in next week during our Week 3 review, and I'll let you know if I'm happy, sad, concerned, elated. I'll let you know. Now, we're going to move into the segment that everybody looks forward to. We're going to do our Week 3 Pick'em segment. But before that, I'm going to go to give you my list of off-the-radar games and the trap games. I love Admiral Akbar. So let's go ahead and look at some of our off-the-radar games. 2-0 UCF. Under Gus Malzahn, they've looked very impressive. Week 1, opening night Thursday, down 21-0 at home against a very game Boise State team. They come back and win the game. They are on the road at ACC opponent Louisville. And this is one of those matchups the ACC needs to have. Louisville got absolutely boat raced by Ole Miss on Labor Day night, Monday night. That is the game that kind of put Matt Corral into the Heisman finalist discussion for me. So, big off-the-radar game. And I believe UCF is favored on the road as a non-Power 5 opponent at an ACC school. You don't see that every day. Another one that, I've already said this. I believe Texas A&M is at a very bad spot right now. I mean, they escaped Colorado by the hairs of their chinny chin with the victory. And they have some big matchups right around the corner. Next week, they take on Arkansas and Jerry World, neutral site game. Is their offense going to be able to only muster 10 points like they did last week against a mediocre Colorado squad? And then 2 weeks after that, they host mighty Alabama and then travel to Missouri. So they're going to have their work cut out for them before their starting quarterback is supposed to return. They host New Mexico. So New Mexico, the Lobos, who are 2-0, doesn't happen very often, travel to number 7, Texas A&M. And Terry Wilson is the quarterback at New Mexico. USCC fans are going to recognize that name. He was the dynamic playmaker quarterback for Kentucky the last couple seasons. He transferred in. He is a threat with his legs and his arm. Could they go there and pull off the upset of the year next to Jacksonville State, Florida State? We'll have to wait and see. So if you see, when you're checking the ticker or your phone Saturday, late in the game, and you see that's a ball game, don't be surprised. You might have heard it from this guy first. So New Mexico at number 7 A&M, off the radar. Another big one, a 2-0 Nevada squad. Carson Strong. Remember that name. Nevada's quarterback, and I've seen this. This is legitimate. This is from experts. I have seen on several draft boards, Carson Strong is the first quarterback taken in this year's draft. Nevada's 2-0, already have a victory over a Power 5 opponent at Cal. This week they travel to Kansas State, a very solid K-State squad that took care of Stanford in week 1. And Stanford, the coach killers, what they've done to USC and coach Clay Helton, if you missed that. And Kansas State is without their starting quarterback, Skylar Thompson. So Nevada, could maybe they shouldn't go there and win now. Maybe they should be favored in that game. So another big off-the-radar squad. And if Nevada can do that, 2 victories against 2 Power 5 opponents on the road, they're going to start to get some AP poll love, and especially some love from those who know what they're accomplishing there in Reno. Another off-the-radar game, Ball State, the defending MAC champions who, yes, they got throttled last week at Penn State. I thought they would keep that game kind of close. That was one of my potential trap games last week. Totally missed it. They traveled to Wyoming. In Wyoming, big win last week over NIU. Last week, Wyoming at Northern Illinois was our non-Power 5 showcase game for our Pick'em segment. So Ball State travels to altitude to take on, looks like a pretty good Wyoming Cowboys team. Last off-the-radar game, Utah. My Utes, the 2 Utes, I picked them to win the Pac-12 South. They took it last week at BYU in Provo. BYU pulled the upset. After losing 9 straight games in the Holy War, BYU gets it done. Utah drops out of the rankings. Still have time to right the ship. Still can be a factor in the Pac-12 South, especially seeing how USC could respond from a new coach. Their coach is fired. Who knows how they're going to respond? But Utah travels to 2-0 San Diego State. And Brady Hoke is the coach for the Aztecs, former Michigan coach, and they just beat Arizona. So they already have a victory over a Pac-12 opponent. So Utah, be on the lookout as you travel to San Diego for this game. Now, Admiral Akbar, you're up. The trap games for week 3 of Just Win, baby. Purdue at number 12 Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame next week plays number 18 in Chicago at Soldier Field. But to me, this is not necessarily a trap game. Yes, Notre Dame could be looking ahead, but this is just a game. Purdue can absolutely go there and win. We know what Jeff Brom and Purdue can do. They can scheme. They can score points. As long as they stay healthy. Excuse me, get another swig here. If they can stay healthy, and Purdue will score points. It just comes down to, can their defense make enough stops? Purdue better be on red alert, upset alert for this game, but maybe even more if they're looking ahead next week to playing Wisconsin. But Purdue, this game did not make our pick segment. It should have, but I regret that. But Notre Dame, be on the lookout for trap game and upset alert. Next one, Fresno State. The Bulldogs have looked great in this early young season. Shut out a UConn team, which doesn't say much, but the way they did it, and they hung with number 4 Oregon at Eugene 2 weeks ago. The same team that went into Ohio State and pulled off that improbable upset during week 2. This Fresno State team looks to be game. And they travel to number 13 UCLA, who I am very bullish on. I did pick them to win, to beat LSU in week 1. And I think LSU, they have the attention of this Bulldogs team. 3 hours away, the Bulldog fans will travel to the Rose Bowl. And UCLA better be ready. Their quarterback for Fresno State can absolutely sling the ball. And I think they might be looking ahead because next week, UCLA, they travel to Palo Alto and play Stanford. So hopefully they're not looking ahead. But this Fresno State team is going to give them, I believe, all they can handle and more. Next one, my next trap game, is Tulane travels to number 17 Ole Miss. And I don't know how good Tulane is, They only lost by 5 to Oklahoma in week 1. That could have just been something to do with Oklahoma. It's week 1. You're working out some kinks. There were some bad late turnovers for Oklahoma, which kept Tulane in the game. Lost by 5. Good showing. I don't know how good or bad they are. But they travel to Oxford to play Ole Miss, who's rolling. But next week, Ole Miss travels to #1 Alabama. Huge game in Tuscaloosa between former colleagues. Lane Kiffin tries to knock off Nick Saban, the master, the genius, the Lord. But they better not be looking ahead to playing Bama, because Tulane, maybe they go to Ole Miss and give them a game. Last trap game is Mississippi State and their cowbells travel to Memphis, who is 2-0 out of in conference. Next week, Mississippi State hosts LSU, so they might be looking ahead to that game. And how good this Mississippi State team is, yeah, they defeated week 2 a solid NC State squad that I thought was going to potentially challenge Clemson, which they maybe can. But they needed an absolute divine miracle week 1 to come back and beat Louisiana Tech late. So, Bulldogs, be on the lookout. You're walking into a trap. Now, before our pick segment, my FCS pick of the week. And the FCS now has scored 8. And for those of you who aren't aware, the FCS is lower Division I football. So that would be like the SIU Carbondales of the world, Villanovas. So smaller schools that have talent, but don't have usually the prowess for facilities, recruiting, brands that your Power 5 Division I schools can. But they've scored 8 victories this young season over Division I opponents. And I believe that streak will continue. My pick, and you heard it from here first, I'm putting myself, going public, everything, I think this game is going to happen. I am very, very impressed with where Rutgers is. They're 2-0 on the young season. Coach Greg Schiano has those boys believing. They're playing after being the laughingstock. I mean, if it weren't for Kansas football, Vanderbilt football, Rutgers would have been the joke of every Power 5 school the last few years. Actually, since joining the Big Ten Conference like they did recently. They're 2-0, great story for Rutgers. But this week, they host FCS number 4 in the FCS poll. The Delaware Blue Fighting Hens out of the Colonial Conference travel to Rutgers to play. I don't know what the line is on this game. I couldn't find one. But I think Delaware walks out of Piscataway with a victory. So I'm calling it Delaware wins. And wouldn't that be something to then have 9 victories over Power 5 conference opponents, Division I opponents? That is absolutely off the chain. Now, everyone's favorite segment. Let's move into our Pick'em segment for week 3 for Just Win, Baby week. Now, in my hand, I have my co-host. If you watched our first couple episodes, my friend Charlie, who is an avid Missouri fan. He was the one who was more or less covering the Missouri Tigers black and gold. He's been unable to join us the last couple weeks. Hopefully we'll be back in the near future, attending to a family matter. I do have his picks right here in hand. And I do have picks from our guest picker this week, my friend Brett, who lives in Chicagoland, big-time college football fanatic, sports guy, loyal black and gold viewer, a part of the family. So it's great to have Brett joining us this week. To recap where we are, after 2 weeks, Charlie and I are tied 16-14. Not really not exactly the start I wanted to get off to. We're both sitting at 53% for the season. Yikes! It's still early. Just to recap, I was hoping to be at 70% is my goal by season's end. I got some time, but I got a little bit of work to do. So let's go into this week's slate of Pick'em games. Our first game on the docket, big one. Number 8 Cincinnati travels to Bloomington to take on the Hoosiers. On paper, this looks like a huge mismatch, a hope kind of game for Indiana. Brett, we'll do guess first. Brett says Cincy steps up in competition. But Cincinnati scores early and often. He's got Cincinnati. Good pick. Makes total sense. Charlie agrees with Brett. He's also got Cincinnati. Indiana, this is really a game about show us the pride you have. And Tom Allen is great at motivating his team. Right now, this game is all about Cincinnati. It's like they have forgotten that Indiana was once upon a time ranked. But after that ass-kicking to Iowa, definitely deserved to drop out of the rankings. They still were picked to finish second or third by most every expert, every sports writer, magazine, behind Ohio State in the Big Ten East. I think this week they get up. Will I pick Indiana? I think their offense gets it done. Defense makes enough stops. Hell with it. I'm picking Indiana. We have our first disagreement. Go Hoosiers. Next game. Number 15, Virginia Tech travels to West Virginia. Virginia Tech has maybe been one of the darlings of the early season, undefeated, kind of out of nowhere. I liked West Virginia potentially as a sleeper team in the Big 12. They have lost opening week at Maryland. This game, Brett sees. I'm not sure they are back, speaking about Virginia Tech, but Tech wins in an ugly game. Charlie also has VTech. Me, I'm going with my gut. They're going to sing Country Roads, Take Me Home. I'm going with the home team, the Mountaineers, West Virginia, get it done. Another disagreement. Third game, Minnesota travels to Colorado. To elevation. Can Colorado come back from that heartbreaking loss last week, which was in their hands? It was in their grasp. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Brett sees this game as so. While Minnesota can't stop anyone, then again, they've played decent competition. I mean, Ohio State especially. Buffaloes couldn't get out of their own way versus Texas A&M last week to score a season-defining victory. They struggled to bounce back from that heartbreaker. He's got Minnesota. Charlie's got Minnesota. I'm joining rank. I think Minnesota is just too much. Their run game, their offensive line is going to control the line of scrimmage. Passing game, Tanner Morgan still can hit his tight ends, find his wide receivers. They get it done without Mo Ibrahim, who's out for the season. We all like Minnesota. Next game, we got two brain games. First one, Northwestern, the Fighting Fitzies, my boy, my guy, travels to Duke to take on Cutcliffe and the Blue Devils. This game, Brett says Duke hasn't played anyone worth mentioning. True. After this game, still haven't. He's going with, but he's still taking Northwestern. I mean, Northwestern got throttled, got absolutely put in their place opening week, Friday night against Michigan State, got ran all over in excess of 300 yards. Charlie also has Northwestern. Me, I'm a student of history. And I believe Northwestern has more physicality. They did bounce back last week. Week 2, they defeated Indiana State. I think they only put up 24 points against the Sycamores. I actually thought the Sycamores would defeat them. That was going to be my FCS upset of the week. But I don't know how good this Northwestern squad is. And they have a history lately of starting so slow, but then riding the ship during Big Ten play. I'm going with history. Duke has won the last 2 meetings. Make it 3 in a row. I'm going with Duke. Another disagreement. No, next up, Stanford at Vandy, the second brain game of the week. These great academic institutions that also play good athletics. Maybe not always football, but they do play them. So for this game, Brett says he'll take the coach killers. Stanford pours it on. Charlie also likes Stanford. Me, Vandy. I don't want to say a big win last week at Colorado State. It's still Colorado State. It's a Mountain West team. You're an SEC squad. But any win right now for Vandy is a big win. I don't see it happening. Again, I'm going with Stanford just to outmuscle them at home in Nashville. So we all like Stanford. Next game, Florida State which needs a huge bounce back after that embarrassing loss to Jacksonville State, which I get it. I don't know what's to even add insult to injury after that loss, probably the worst loss in their program's history, an offensive lineman. After that, while Jacksonville State is celebrating on the field, takes the opportunity, proposes to his girlfriend. She said yes, so there is a victory and a loss. But be mindful of the situation. That shows right there what I said earlier this week. There is absolutely, to me, a culture issue at Florida State. That right there, obviously, asking this young woman to be his wife is way bigger than football, than anything it is. But be mindful of the circumstances. It's like that's basically just showing, you know what, maybe I planned on asking her to marry me after this game. Maybe I can hold off another game or two. That right there just shows me you don't give a damn. Worst loss ever, and there you are on the field, down on a knee, while Jacksonville State is celebrating on your field at your house. Don't get it. So Florida State travels to Wake Forest. Brett says, Wake over Florida State. First time I've ever said it in my lifetime. There it is. Wake has defeated Florida State in recent memory. I might say maybe 10 years ago, if not slightly under. Wake did beat E.J. Manuel in a very highly thought of Florida State team in Winston-Salem. Charlie also has Wake. I'm going with Wake Forest too. I think they're a better coach team, and that's just going to be a tough game, a tough week for them to bounce back for Florida State. We all like Wake. Next game, Oklahoma State. The Cowboys travel to the Smurf Turf, taking on Boise State. What a great game. A game that no one really knows about. Brett, he says, Oklahoma State, their streak of winning ugly comes to an end. They're 2-0 on the young season, but absolutely have not looked the part. Won ugly. He says that comes to an end. Boise State on the turf. Charlie also likes Boise State. I'm taking them too on the Smurf Turf. Big. I think actually they win big due to the Boise State program. Next game, number 22 Auburn at number 10 Penn State. Already talked about this game a little bit. Brett says Penn State has played and defeated a real football team, being Wisconsin, a ranked Wisconsin team week 1 at Camp Randall. And Auburn has not. And they have not really played anyone. Huge step up in competition for Auburn this week. Brett likes Penn State. So does Charlie. We're in complete agreement. 100,000 plus people. First time in 2 years there. It'll be ruckus. It'll be lit. Huge victory. Huge home crowd presence and advantage. Penn State takes care of business. We all like the Nittany Lions. Next game we've got is number 19 Arizona State travels to number 23 BYU. BYU has scored 2 wins over Pac-12 competition. Beat Utah week 2, Arizona, week 1. It's at altitude in Provo. That team looks really good, but I think this is going to be a different kind of matchup. As far as this game, Brett has it going. He says BYU runs out of gas, Arizona State. Charlie also likes Arizona State. I think the Arizona State speed, it's a great story. The BYU story, BYU. You guys know I love the Cougars. It's been a great story. They're doing much better than I thought they would. But I think this early Cinderella run ends. I think Arizona State just has too much speed, too much playmakers. Jaden Daniels, their quarterback for the Sun Devils, stud. We all like Arizona State on the road. Next game, we go into our spotlight games, and we'll do our black and gold games first. First up, me being a gentleman, SEMO at MIZZOU. SEMO at Missouri. Brett says, Missouri, better win, ! Charlie basically says the same thing. He likes Missouri. We all like Missouri across the board. A get-right game, big-time week of preparation. They need it to play a pretty tough BC game next week. Next one is the other black and gold, our Iowa Hawkeyes. IOWA. Iowa is at home against Kent State. Already mentioned this. Big time next 2 weeks for the Hawkeyes. Need to improve. especially on the offensive side of the ball. Great get right, cleanup type game. Brett says, after an early hangover, Iowa rolls. I absolutely think that too. I think they might come in a little bit of a letdown out of the gate, but we all like Iowa, Charlie, Brett, myself, to roll. Iowa wins. Now, our Academy Spotlight Game of the Week. Every week, we always like to highlight one of the service academies, whether it's Army, Air Force, or Navy. This week, Army is up, the Cadets. UConn travels to West Point to take on Army. Brett says Army marches on. Charlie agrees. So do I. March on, Army. Next game is our non-Power 5 matchup, Spotlight Game of the Week. You know, what I think is going to be a great matchup of non-Power 5 teams. This week, we have SMU. The Mustangs travel to Louisiana Tech. Brett sees this game as such, SMU in a shootout. Charlie also likes the Mustangs. This SMU squad, really under the radar right now. They're 2-0. They can score. They're quick. I like SMU. We like SMU across the board. Mustangs win. Big time. Now, this is our FCS matchup game of the week. I always try to find the best FCS game of the week to where it's good on good at their level. And this week, woo, Ric Flair style, we've got a big one. We have a top 8 matchup. Number 4, James Madison, travels to number 8, Weber State. I believe James Madison's the Dukes. Both of these teams made the FCS playoffs last year. Both excellent teams. This is how Brett sees it. Traveling west into altitude against a team that has a game versus a Power 5 opponent under its belt in Weber State could pose a problem for James Madison. With that said, JMU finds the end zone over and over and over again. Brett likes James Madison, so does Charlie, and so do I. James Madison wins across the board. Now, here it is, our Spotlight Game of the Week. It's got to be number 1 Alabama, traveling to the Swamp at number 11 Florida. Will the parity continue amongst the college football elite? Mentioned during our Week 2 review show earlier this week. And embrace the parity. Clemson and Ohio State both have early season losses. They've been the usual suspects in the college football playoffs recently, just like Alabama has. Just what if Alabama loses this game? Those 3 juggernauts all have a loss at week 3. That would be absolutely monumental. And plus, I would love to see how much Alabama would drop in the polls or how much Florida would rise. Sorry, all you folks, you don't want to hear it. You've heard it time and time again. You want to just turn your cheeks. Just that SEC bias, how that would play out. So that's why I'd love to see Alabama lose. Am I picking that? We'll have to wait and see. Brett has this game as such. Alabama should be challenged at some point, but this won't be it. Roll Tide. Brett likes the Tide on the road, hostile environment. He's got the Gators. Charlie also likes Alabama to win. Bryce Young is the quarterback of Alabama. This is his first year starting. Yes, he's faced a decent Miami team, absolutely tore them limb from limb. 44-13, I believe, was the final score. But that was in Atlanta. Very Alabama crowd family. I think there's a lot of Alabama fans that might even have condos there in Atlanta, just for the number of times they've gone. Hostile environment, that place will be lit, off the hook. That being said, I got to go with Alabama. It's hard for me to doubt them on the road with Nick Saban, but I absolutely would love to be wrong on this pick just to see what would happen and the chaos that would follow. Would people then start to say the sky is falling? Potentially. But it would be great to see some other teams keep moving up in the rankings. So we all like number 1 Alabama to win. Hostile environment on the road at Florida. So that's it. It's been a great episode. Thank you very much for joining us once again. I can't tell you how appreciative I am. Please feel free, like, share, subscribe, let us know how I'm doing, let me know. I love to give you some feedback, share your comments, questions, concerns. Anything is fair game. If you want to talk about pop culture, music, movies, football, just keep it adult-like. We're all adults. Let's act like it. So, enjoy the football. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Expect the Week 3 review either Tuesday or maybe Wednesday morning. Until then, take care of yourself, to you and yours. Anthony, happy birthday once again. Peace, love, harmony. And thank you for joining me on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. We'll see you next week. See ya.